Howdy everyone, Runt9 here, and welcome to Runt9 Reviews Adore. Adore is an action roguelike that came out a couple months ago, back in February, from Cadabra Games in early access. And it takes a little bit of a different twist on the action roguelike genre by, instead of you having abilities or attacks to deal damage to enemies, you instead can capture these enemy monsters and use those monsters to fight for you. And it's action, not turn-based. So this isn't, a Pokemon clone or something like that. It plays very differently. So speaking of playing very differently, how about we jump into some gameplay and some commentary, take a look at what the concept of a run looks like and a little bit of the meta currency, and then I'll come back and tell you my thoughts on the game after that. See you in just a bit. Alrighty, so how about we take a look at a little bit of gameplay. So as soon as you click start, it dumps you into the map, but it's kind of the overworld. It has a little bit of like a Hades type of setup where you've got this overworld progression in between runs, and then you go through a portal into a run itself. So it's action roguelike, right click to move, space to do a dodge roll. Dodge roll makes you invulnerable while you're doing it. And so the meta progression is with these fragments. And so you can unlock different mechanics as well as unlock new monsters. And so how about we unlock some new monster? We have a new creature, Brior, a beast. He has a special attack when summoned, stuns all enemies around himself for each enemy hit, gain an amount of armor. Seems pretty neat. And then we will exit that, and why don't we use some shards on a new mechanic? It requires 9, so how about we don't? I don't think there's any more creatures to unlock. So we can go into a run. And so basically the way that this game works is when you first start out, you have no creatures and you yourself can't attack. So you have to walk up to a creature that looks interesting to you. And in this case, I will take one of you, and you capture them. And now your attacks are sending the monster at an enemy. So you hold down the button to summon them, and you point the arrow the direction you want them to go. You can see down at the bottom they have a green bar that is charging up. That is their special attack. And so you can see more details on your monsters by coming in here, as well as your players. You can see your HP, stamina, regeneration, and movement speed. And for creatures, you can see their synergies, as well as information, their HP, damage, summon cost, speed, and what their special attack is. So you saw this kind of at the start, is that what this creature does is it freezes an enemy. So you have these essence pillars, and if we open the map, you'll see these shrines as well. So essence will give you either movement speed, stamina, or max health. I tend to like stamina regen the most early on, but max health is also incredibly important. And so the way the stamina works, you've got these 2 stamina bars. So if I summon a creature, I lose 1 bar of stamina. So if you summon 2 creatures in rapid succession, then you run out of stamina and you need it to regen before you can do anything else. So when you go to a shrine, you offer an essence. You can either upgrade an existing creature you have with another synergy, or you can unlock another slot. In addition, you can also unlock slots for 2 essences, and I believe you can do that at any time. You can only use a shrine once per room, but multiple shrines will show up on a floor. And so you go into another room, you fight more enemies, and it's the typical roguelike thing where you have to kill the room before you can do anything else. And so you can see that I can recall the creature by tapping the key that they're on to bring them back to me so I can summon them again. And that's an incredibly important mechanism to master, which I certainly haven't yet, but it also takes stamina to do that. As you see, not enough stamina. Well, you also have the ability to walk over your creature, and that will immediately bring them back with a little bit of delay. They need to finish their animation. And I believe that's a mechanic that you unlock with fragments, but that ends up being very important. So we picked up a key. There's going to be a treasure chest somewhere. So we can pick another essence, and we'll grab some movement speed here. So 5% movement speed obviously isn't a lot, but movement speed can make a difference for dodging. And so the last thing we'll do is we'll go into this room, we'll grab another creature, and we'll probably stop after that point, because basically the only thing you haven't seen is the boss room and the shop. So we picked up a Scraw, and Scraw has a little bit less HP than Icy. Switch that over. A good bit less HP than Icy, does a little bit less damage, but has the same summon cost and higher speed. In addition, his special is Inflicts Bleed, which does a little bit of extra damage over time. And what you're looking for later on is for these guys to get synergies with one another. So like maybe Icy has more damage after a beast hits a target. And so those synergies, especially picking those up at shrines, can be incredibly useful and very, very powerful. Sorry, got some cat hair on the nose. And so yeah, basically you just keep doing this. You can swap out your monsters at any time, but you have to keep in mind that if you have already gotten some levels on them, then you will lose those levels when you swap them out for something else. And on top of that, you do have, like I said, there's treasure chests and item shops and things like that. They're not super important, but there are some good items, and so there is a boss room there. It looks like there was maybe a shop probably off that direction. So we're not going to jump into the boss fight. That should give you a good idea, though. You basically just summon your creatures, point them in the direction to go, they'll do an attack, and then let them come back to you. Rinse and repeat until you've cleared out all 4 floors, beat the final boss, and then you're done. And that's basically what there is to the gameplay in Adore. How about we jump back to the camera and I will tell you what I think about the game. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed that quick look at Adore's gameplay. And I mean, you probably got a pretty good feeling for whether or not you would like the game from that, but how about I jump into my cards review system and tell you a more in-depth analysis of my opinions on the game. And if you don't know what my cards review system is, as always, there's a link in the description below to the original introduction video to this format. So jumping right into the core gameplay loop for Adore, and this is probably where I'm gonna struggle the most, is I really like the game and I want to like it more, but it's not as captivating as I initially thought it would be. And part of that is that I know there will be more content added later on. There's not a ton of content right now, but I'm giving the core gameplay loop a B. And as I always have to say, I get scared that, you know, someone's going to hear something that isn't an A and say, oh, it's a bad game. Far, far from it. This game is very fun, albeit not necessarily super captivating. I do enjoy doing runs in Adore, but if I have to put it in line with a bunch of other action roguelikes, it starts to kind of fade in the distance a little bit for me. And I have been playing it a lot on stream. I've had a lot of people watch me play it and tell me kind of what they're thinking about it as well. And it seems to be the common theme is that people just want a little bit more. And not necessarily just more monsters, but just kind of like more to do. Because you hop into a floor, you go from room to room fighting monsters, you get essence that gives you movement speed, max health, or max stamina, or stamina regeneration. And then you can upgrade your existing monsters or unlock more slots for more monsters. And then there's an item shop and a boss room. I've described the entire game, and that's the main problem, is just the overall game itself is very shallow. And that's not to say that the skeleton and the framework that the game is proposing isn't good. It's just, I don't think they've executed on it as well as they could have, even going into early access. I think that they probably pushed it to early access just a little bit early. You know, there have been some game-breaking bugs and things like that as well. And granted, the developers clean them up very quickly. I've had the developer watch streams and, you know, catch bugs while we're playing it live on stream. But it's not that I have complaints about the game. It's just that I don't have enough positive to say about the game when it comes to the core gameplay loop. and that's why it sits at a B. But now for the game's atmosphere, I think this is one of the things that really takes the game up a notch. I'm giving the atmosphere an A. I believe that scanning through my list, so far this is the highest atmosphere rating I've given to any game that I've reviewed thus far on this channel. And you might look at it and say, but why? It looks kind of like, League of Legends style artwork, modern League of Legends style artwork. And in my opinion, if you're going to do an action RPG or an action roguelike or something like that, it doesn't need to be super realistic, but it needs to have a good art style and stick to that art style. It needs to be clear who the different monsters are, where your character is. The different items need to look different. I want the attacks to have cool animations, and I want the attacks to feel impactful and have great sound design, and I want good music, and I basically just described everything that Adore does. The artwork is very well done. I think the models and animation are fantastic. I think the sound design is absolutely incredible. I think the immersion of a run is really, really well done. Again, I kind of go back to the core gameplay loop in the sense that it's not necessarily that there's a lot of content, but the content that is there is pretty, it's immersive. There's not necessarily any story, but I do think that once you get into a run, you can lose yourself in this world. And that's a testament to how powerful the atmosphere is in this game. It is a very atmospheric game. And I think that, obviously with more content, other scores would be boosted, but the atmosphere itself, I don't want them to change a thing. I just want them to keep doing what they're doing. It is really well done. Can it be better? Yeah, I think that there are probably some places it could be made better. But as it sits right now, it's really, really good. And that's why I'm putting that atmosphere at an A. Now, moving into the game's replayability, I'm kind of wavering on this one a bit because I have enjoyed playing different kinds of runs on stream, trying to find different synergies on different animal or monster upgrades and things like that. But at the same time, as I kind of mentioned before, I'm not captivated to go back and play more. It's just more of, hey, it's Roguelike Wednesday. I haven't played Adore in a while, or maybe a new patch came out and I want to try it. And so I'm putting the replayability at a B-. And I mean, yes, there is a meta currency that unlocks new monsters and unlocks new mechanisms. And I do like that. Meta currency rolls in a little bit slowly, but, it's okay. And I would say that, there's obviously a lack of content in the game. It is very early in early access, and it makes sense. I get that. But at the moment, I'm pretty sure there's only 3 or 4 bosses, not counting the final boss. And with there only being 3 main floors, you're going to see the same bosses. There's not a lot of monsters in the game right now, though they are adding some every few patches or so. It's just as it sits right now, there's just not enough in the game for me to recommend it as a long-term, you're going to sink hundreds of hours into it. I think you're probably going to do, enough runs to beat the final boss, maybe a handful of times, and say, okay, I've had my fun with this game. I'll come back to it in a couple years after a lot more development has been done. That's kind of where I'm at on it. Is it good as it is now? Yeah. Is it where I would want it to be for kind of an evergreen roguelike? Not really. It doesn't quite reach that echelon. And so replayability for me is that B-. And continuing the roller coaster cycle here, we're going to jump into the difficulty. And yet again, I have to praise the developers in this particular case on the balancing of the game, giving that difficulty an A. It is just as good as the atmosphere is in this game. I mean, that's why I gave it the same rating. Is I feel like every boss, every monster is tough, but fair. Once you learn the mechanisms, especially after they redid the stamina system in the game, where you can't just sit there and spam monsters, you have to more tactically select who are you going to summon and when. And especially the boss fights. Even though the boss fights have very few patterns at the moment, it's usually like 3 patterns per boss, and the 3rd pattern only comes out after the boss gets below half HP. I still have a lot of enjoyment with the challenge curve of the game. I feel like it scales very well as monsters level up with you. And I haven't beat a run yet. I haven't done enough runs to really memorize the final boss patterns, because I usually end up in some cases where I'm trying out something different. It works out very poorly for me and I have to start over, which is basically how I play roguelikes is, hey, I'm going to try a new build. Oh, that's bad. Okay, don't do that again. And so their difficulty curve is really, really good in my opinion. I feel like the monsters are balanced. There's almost never did I feel like I picked up a monster and said, this monster's useless, yeet it and give me something better. It was, okay, how do I want to build my team to attack the game? And again, I think that it's tough but fair. You will fail and you will have to learn the boss patterns. Once you learn the boss patterns, it's like, okay, dodge this, summon your monsters in and pull them out before they do their big AoE, and just get used to the mechanisms. And I like that. I think the challenge curve was really well done. They balanced the game really well for what is such a young game and something that innately would be hard to balance with things like the monster synergies and stuff like that. So absolutely huge kudos for nailing the balance early. And I hope they continue that balance as more content is added. And I hope that's part of the reason why the content is a little slim right now, is because they've done such a good job with balance. Now, moving into the final category, this is going to be the support for the game. And, you know, obviously I'm going to have a little bit of bias here because I have had close contact with the developer, and I really do appreciate Cadabra Games for staying in contact with me, coming and hanging out on streams and things like that. And, you know, letting me know when a new patch comes out and say, hey, I would love for you to check it out on stream and see, you know, how you feel about it. And that's awesome. That said, so far from what I've seen over these past 2 months, the amount of new content is fairly low. Even though the roadmap is out there, it is a living roadmap. You can see where their future is. I'm giving their support a B+. I think there is a lot of room to grow. And I know that, you know, as a young indie developer, there's only so much you can do. And I have to put this caveat on every single game that I review, because I'm reviewing these young early access games. A lot can change. But from the patterns that I've seen in these first couple months, a lot of minor patches, bug fixes, UI cleanups, things like that, that's all good. And I love to see that. The community involvement seems solid. But I want to see more of a push for more content, more monsters, more items, things like that. The stamina rework was a great one. I think that there is a higher tier of support that they can get to with, you know, just a little bit more of a push. But at the same time, I don't think that they've done anything wrong thus far. And that's the thing I want to make very clear is absolutely Cadabra Games, great job so far. I want more, but I don't think that there is anything that they have done wrong. And that's why his support is sitting at that B+. And I think I've given a B+ a couple times, somewhere in that same realm of, I think that they're doing a good job. I just want to see more from them as time goes by. And that's why that support is sitting at a B+. So as a final recap for the grades so far, we had core gameplay loop at a B, atmosphere at an A, replayability at a B-, difficulty at an A, and support at a B+. Now, getting into my final tier ranking, this is probably yet again one of those ones where I kind of had it on a little bit of a border between two tiers, and you can also look at the scores and see it's fairly roller coastery. You know, the lowest score was a B-, the highest score was an A. There's a few letter grades in between those. I'm going to put Adore in my solid tier. And this goes back to what I said during the core gameplay loop discussion, is that I don't think that it is captivating enough to stand out in a crowd. I think that if, you know, 5 other indie developers put out an action roguelike that did something similar, took mechanisms from other games, that type of thing, Adore wouldn't feel like the original that spawned this and, you know, jumped ahead. I'm going to use another example here. I think they did something unique here. I don't think that I've seen a monster-taming action roguelike before. But I'm going to go to Monster Slayers versus Slay the Spire in the deck-building roguelike genre as a perfect example of this. Monster Slayers, to my knowledge, was the first roguelike deck builder. However, Slay the Spire took that formula and perfected it. I would give Monster Slayers a solid ranking and Slay the Spire a transcendent ranking. I think Adore is right in that same category as Monster Slayers, in that I think they executed their innovative design well, but I see it more as a proof of concept for the industry as a whole than a top tier game on its own. And that's not to say the game itself is bad. Again, solid tier is still in the positive part of the spectrum. It is something that I'm going to keep in my collection. I'm going to pull it out after patches, see how it functions after the patch. But whereas certain other games that I have in my collection, I'm going to play multiple runs. I may just play one run and be like, okay, I get it, put it back on the shelf. And it's lacking something, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just, from my opinion, that innate just dopamine shock of how you feel during a run. And I've had a couple of adrenaline fueled runs, but I think that's not the majority of runs. And that's what I want out of a roguelike, because I want the majority of my runs to be, adrenaline filled dopamine injection type of runs, at least in the action roguelike genre. And so, again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Adore. Honestly, like, if you ask me to find flaws with the game, they would be few and far between. But I also can't find overwhelming positives. I just have a lot of, yeah, it's pretty good, it's pretty good, it's pretty good, other than things like the atmosphere and difficulty, which for me isn't enough to boost it into that special tier, even though I did kind of think about it a bit. So that's why Adore lands in that solid tier, and at the moment in early access, they are asking $10 for it. And honestly, I would recommend it at $10. I wouldn't recommend it for any more. So if the price does increase without a large influx of content, I think that's where my recommendation would falter a little bit. But as it is right now, for $10, it's a great game to have in your collection. I think that you will pick it up. You'll probably play, 3 to 5 hours and stick it on the shelf and just keep up with the updates. And that's basically what I'm doing. I think that if you're into this genre, that's probably what you will do as well. And so I would recommend it at its current price, where it is current content-wise right now. And it is a game that I'm going to keep my eye on. I wanted to stay in contact with Cadabra because I think that so far it's been wonderful having them, interact with me. And I'm excited to see where the game goes. As it sits right now, I'm just wanting more. And I think that's a good thing for early access. I think that's something I haven't hit on enough, is that leaving someone wanting more in early access is okay, because that means you've got a good skeleton. And so I'm excited to see what else happens with Adore. All right, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you all so much for sticking with me through this video, and thank you for all the support on this channel and everywhere else. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know your feedback, likes, dislikes, comments, all that good stuff. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more reviews, first looks, let's plays, all sorts of that stuff, and maybe some unique videos here and there as well. In addition, I stream over on twitch.tv/Runt9plays at the time of this recording 5 days a week, but it changes a little bit, so go over there and check out the schedule. And if you're interested in being more of a part of the community, check out the link tree in the description below. That has a link to the community Discord where you can hang out with me, and you can hang out with the developer of Adore. They are in the Discord as well, and I really love having that community building up. So anyways, that's going to do it. Until the next Runt9 reviews, I'm Runt9, and I will see you later.